Hello, you're very welcome to our presentation by Claudia, Walsh, Sile, Mulvihill and myself, Cynthia, Stewart. We had to turn a multi-day work placement filled with personal and interpersonal opportunities, educational sessions and the placement insights that they generate into an engaging in-house virtual event. We did have several things going for us. As committed work experience teachers in Cavan Institute, we had benefited from huge IT support and training. We knew that our students had also been trained, supported and encouraged to use technology, so we felt confident. In planning the simulated work experience, we had to consider several points. What would the content be? Live, on demand or a mix? And what way will the students be grouped together? And more importantly, what platform would we use? Well, in fact, it was all of points 1 and 2 and 3. Using Microsoft Teams as a collaborative workplace platform was definitely a no-brainer. Obviously, we couldn't replicate the actual placement, the majority of which were still closed at this time, but by thinking of this event not as small one-off presentations, but as a value-added, engagement-driven experience. This simulated work experience brought together childcare students from different class groups to meet childcare practitioners and other industry professionals and take part in live practical sessions, and we included peer-to-peer learning for the childcare students in small groups. We felt that we could create an impactful educational event that would extend well beyond the students' computer screen, and this began with logistics.
Thank you, Cynthia. Hi everyone, my name is Claudia. I wanted to speak to you about the logistics of our online event. So our first step in creating our online event was to assess the learning outcomes that needed to be achieved through our simulation. To do this, we created mapping documents, which you can see from the example here, assessing all the learning outcomes for all modules across our Level 5 and Level 6 programs. All subject tutors needed to assess their learning outcomes, include in the mapping documents the learning outcomes generally achieved by attending work placement. We wanted to assess what learning outcomes could be achieved with certain events. In creating these mapping documents, we knew exactly what was needed, and this was to be our starting point. All aspects of our online event would now fall under achieving our learning outcomes. To create an event at such an extent as this, with staff in excess of 60 students, we first needed to create a system which allowed us to all work independently due to conflicting timetables. In doing this, we created a collaborative space for teachers and also a space for sharing information with all students involved. Our starting point then was to create 2 separate spaces on Microsoft Teams, one for teachers and one for our students. As you can see, the left image is our teacher space and the right is our student space. In the teaching space, we created documents such as to-do lists, calendar drafts, documents discussing key elements that needed to be included, listed learning outcomes, suggestions for content such as videos to be used, guest speakers we could invite, and many other key elements that needed to be included. Each member of staff took a task from the list we created of what was needed for the online event and worked on this area. These documents were live documents, which allowed us to work remotely at home, however see instant changes or input from other teachers and to see how areas of the event were progressing. This space was an invaluable resource for us teachers, as it allowed us to work independently at a convenient time for us, and we would then meet regularly to discuss progress. We found this very effective, and it allowed the creation of the event to work continuously over the weeks before the event was to be held, rather than having to wait for weekly meetings to update each other. By having 2 spaces as we did, the teacher and student team, was the most effective way of using the system for the effective implementation of our event. The event was a huge success, mainly due to the fact that preparation and planning was a team effort from all teachers involved. It was something that was done continuously in our own time, having used this collaborative space on Teams. When we were clear on our learning outcomes and what was to be achieved in our online event, we then created a calendar draft in our teacher dedicated space. This calendar was the foundation to creating an effective event to ensure students achieved their learning outcomes. Each day was created, and also time management was a key element to creating our event. Every resource we were to use over the days of simulation had to be timed. For example, the videos and guest speakers, each were timed and entered into the calendar. Each day of simulation was created literally to the very last minute. When the calendar was completed and agreed upon, the calendar was then issued to students using the class notebook feature on Microsoft Teams. Also, the live events were created using the meeting function on Teams, where all students were invited each day of the simulation. So the calendar was the key point to the production of our live event. Using Microsoft Teams as our platform, we found it was quick and efficient. Personally, we found it ideal for our event. It was time effective also. We were running on a tight schedule, so it was very effective that with a click of a button, we could share information with over 60 students instantly. Teachers could create posts in the teacher space, sending information to all teachers involved instantly, and create a chat space to discuss different elements of the event. The students were also using Microsoft Teams in their studies. Therefore, there was no difficulty with them accessing information or navigating the system. Using a system that students were already familiar with made the process of the online event a success. There was no difficulties accessing documents such as the calendar, the list of resources. Everything was accessible to the students and led to a smooth flow of our online event. So now that I have covered the logistics of our online event, I will now pass you to my colleague Sheila, who will discuss programming. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. My name is Sheila, and as Claudia already mentioned, our main platform for the purpose of this simulation was Microsoft Teams. We could easily invite our guest speakers by adding their email address to the team meeting for the particular day that they were presenting on. For example, on day 3, we had 2 guests from a childcare and special needs assistant background in to speak to the students on their experience in the workplace, and so we invited them easily using their email addresses. Within Teams, we also used breakout rooms for many purposes over the course of the simulation. Students were divided up into these rooms to discuss the topic or theme of the day in question, to implement activities and routines for the purpose of assignments, which promoted peer-to-peer feedback, and finally they were utilised for peer-to-peer reflection purposes. We also used the spotlighting feature within Teams, which allowed us to ensure that the guest speaker's camera was the focus of the main screen when they were presenting. On day 8, our guest from the Child Protection Division of An Garda Síochána was spotlighted and so was clearly visible to all attendees. The large gallery view option ensured that the majority of students were visible on screen at all times, which allowed us to assess engagement throughout the event. Another very useful feature of Microsoft Teams is the class notebook. This notebook allowed us to collaboratively upload, edit and share documents on a daily basis with our students. We as teachers created documents within the teacher-only space before the event. At the beginning of each simulation day, a teacher would distribute a document from that teacher-only space to the whole group at the click of a button. For example, the daily plan, the videos that they would be watching that day to allow them access to watch them again in their own time, the content for the self-directed learning in the afternoon, basically anything that we felt would be useful to share with them that was relevant to the event. We also used the notebook for the students' work experience diaries. Again, a template was created by the teachers, then distributed from the teacher-only space. This was extremely useful as the teachers could check on each student's diary at any point in the day to check if they were completing it as they should or add any notes that they felt was relevant, as it was a collaborative document. To equip the students with the skills and knowledge that they would have seen on their placement, we created a space in our simulation in which we used videos showing examples of professionals working in the early years sector. Students, if on placement, would have been observing their senior practitioners and learning from their practice. We wanted to present that learning to the students, and we did so by using Siren Films, a website dedicated to early years study with membership purchased by Cavan Institute. We studied the areas of the learning outcomes that needed to be covered, then went to the website looking for resources specifically showing this learning. The videos were then selected, timed and added to our video playlist in the teaching space. And from there, the presenter of the simulation could play the selected videos at the allocated times. The videos were placed in order so as to simplify the production of the simulation. The videos were a hard area to present due to the 70+ members watching all at the same time, so these videos were also shared with students in their class notebooks to watch again at their own convenience. Finally, for evaluation purposes, which was a key part to our event, we used lots of different methods to accumulate student feedback. We used Mentimeter, Microsoft Forms, chat polls, questionnaires, and we also used Flipgrid, which the students used to give their own personal reflection for the online event, which was used for their final assessment in their work experience module. All methods used were user-friendly, quick and efficient. I will now pass you over to my colleague Cynthia, who will discuss the Creative Art Hub.
As part of the online event, we programmed Tuesday creative sessions. While the students were meeting learning outcomes for creative arts, they did provide a different type of engagement with the students. To prepare, I created an Art Hub task sheet, which was circulated in advance of the session. I set up an art studio on my kitchen table with 2 devices. My laptop was the main device with audio, chat and camera for the introduction, etc. But I used my phone in a small, cheap tripod, connected as a second device with camera only, and I moved between the 2 devices as I demonstrated the activity and worked alongside the students. We completed a Mentiword feedback session at the end, which revealed the student loved mostly the session and found it relaxing and therapeutic. Another creative experience for the students as part of a broader marketing session was creating a Sway newsletter to reflect some of their experiences as part of the simulated work experience. If you haven't come across Sway before, it's a brilliant app, part of the Office suite, that makes it easy to create and share interactive presentations. And the key thing is, it's really easy after to share and collaborate on these presentations. Students came to a Sway demonstration first, where they were taught how to use the app, and then were put into breakout rooms to create their own Sway and help each other. And here is an example of one of the Sway newsletters that they made during their time. We saw endless possibilities for our staff and students to use this kind of online in-house event within Cavan Institute and also the broader FET sector. Some thoughts we'd like to leave you with. Hosting a virtual event, of course, requires the same care and attention as an in-person event. Planning, preparation and teamwork were vital components. Programming and a varied schedule were core elements also. Engagement and interaction for everybody involved was key. Feedback, both summative and formative in different ways, was really important to the event. And finally, technical support, which we were very lucky to have, is essential. Thank you for listening to our presentation. If you'd like to know more, please don't hesitate to contact us at Cavan Institute.